Okay, so let's just make sure everyone's here. Good to go. Chris, go ahead and say something real fast.
Hello.
Making sure your audio levels are good. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it. We're going to give a quick drive-by of essentially what's going on to kind of go over what we discussed last week and the post that we made and the poll that we did on Discord earlier today, technically yesterday. And so get right into it. Come January 1st, we're going to be jumping headfirst into the polish pass of like cleaning up the core foundation of the game. Now, this is going to be a long time coming based off of just feedback, criticism that we've gotten over the years in terms of things that we need to do better. And those will be things like pathfinding, those will be things like performance, those will be things like the bugs, because you figure we need to basically push that and get to a point where it's no longer an issue so we can deliver on the rest of the content on our roadmap. Just to kind of give you a quick little recap, I believe that it really came to a head in 2022. And at that point, I was working full time at a day job. And essentially, there were some things that got in that we believed were the best way of doing certain things. And we learned the hard way over the last 1 to 2 years, the growing pains that have accumulated with the project getting larger and getting more expansive, that what we did was not correct. So when I quit my day job, I ended up just doing contract work and just things on the side and focused on the project around 2022 to 2023 full time. This was one of the things that I've tried to eradicate and fix over the last couple of years. And I think that it's come to a head recently in terms of how slow and piss poor 2024 has been for us. And I'm not one of those people to basically, inflate in terms of our success and whatnot. We've had our successes, we've had our failures. And I feel like this period during January, February, March, we're going to come out of it a lot stronger than when we went in, essentially. And what I wanted to do was I was going to go through the list. So we had a meeting yesterday. We were there for like 2 hours, and we went over an itemization of what we felt were the biggest complaints that people had towards the game. Issues that were systemic, that have grown over the years. Performance, optimization, you name it. And I'm just going to do a speed run. So the idea of this is essentially, and I'll be getting to the poll, and I'll be getting into basically the end of the year poll as well, if you guys haven't voted towards the end. And then we'll open up the floor for a discussion, a Q&A on Voice, on Steam, and on YouTube. So everywhere I'll be looking when we get to that point to basically answer your questions, whether they be in voice, whether they be in text. So just raise your hand when we get to that point towards the end. Sally Durvar couldn't make it, so Chris is subbing in. And again, we're going to try and get more developers here every Saturday. It's going to be Chris and Efren, ideally, minimum, going ahead on Saturdays. And we'll try and turn it more into like a more formal podcast. So we can also have some lightheartedness, and you guys can just we could talk about the game, things that inspired the game, like the new 28 Years Later that's coming out. But this one will be more serious. And then ideally, as we get more on track and everything's starting to get situated, we'll find like a light tone so we can kind of like deviate at times. But anyhow, let me get back on the original topic. So the plan going into January is next week, Derek's going to go in and he's going to basically fix about 2 or 3 critical bugs that's stopping the current experimental build from going to public. Sorry, not public, but experimental public. So what I was going to do to basically give people something that they can play right now after this podcast was I was going to put out what we have right now on a special opt-in that anyone can play. Now, the Patreons and the Discord supporters have already had access to these builds because they get access to developer builds or whatever. So they get access to like our raw developer builds, mind you. So the idea is that they've been helping us test it in isolation for the last week or two. But regardless, we need to basically just put it out there so more people can play it that want to try it out. But again, the experimental is a little bit buggy when it comes to basically just the evacuation. We know about this. It's on our priority list going into Monday, Tuesday. At this point, I have zero confidence of being able to get a experimental build over the public in its entirety going into the end of December because of just generally the systemic issues, and I don't want to introduce the vehicles, the chaos vehicles, into a public build. They are not ready yet. They need 1 to 2 weeks in their entirety after all these bugs and after all this cleanup period is fixed in February. So we can give you guys a solid release that's not going to piss everyone off. Because the vehicles on the normal build are serviceable, they're just ugly to look at. So just keep that in mind, is that it's going to be on the experimental. We'll push this out after this podcast. We'll push for a normal patch to experimental around Monday, Tuesday of next week. And then come January 1st, we are starting our cleanup process. I'm taking responsibility of a section, Derek's taking responsibility of a section, and so on and so forth for everyone on the team for making sure that we're going to deliver on the content. Now, there will be character modelers and animators that are going to be still working on the doctrine stuff because there's nothing they can do to help us. This is purely a programmer problem at its root, at its core. So when it comes to the character modelers and the animators, they're working on the doctrine stuff. They're still making sure all of that's situated. They're getting the volcano miner thrower. They're getting the radio tower extender for the radio man, so we can build that. So you can use that as the proxy to call in airstrikes around the world or whatever. So you don't always have to have a radio man at every possible location. So you can have 1 or 2 radio men, build a couple of small little relays, and then call in airstrikes around those relays as long as they're not destroyed. Same thing like the DNA, the scientist ability, where we showed it off on Discord last week, where it can passively steal infection from a zone. So they'll be working and polishing and making sure that when we finish our job of getting the programming up to par during this cleanup process, we can effectively roll into the doctrines and have a massive backlog of content, animations, and airstrikes to revamp and change. So when it comes down to it, Derek's taking an aspect. Derek's aspect by a week itemization is essentially structure logic, redoing the building with the engineers, retrofitting and cleaning up how we do building placement, making it more form-fitting to the object so that you can place it in more areas and it's not as aggressive in terms of like you're doing a box check for a circular structure for some reason. Those kind of things, improving the repair points, improving the attack points, improving the way that AI target buildings, things that are fundamental to the core that would increase the effectiveness of the AI against you and for you when it comes to the circ. That's what Derek is focusing on the first week of January. That will bleed into the second week. Then the second week, if everything goes to plan, then he'll be essentially starting on the airstrikes and essentially he'll be putting in the new airstrike packages, but obviously it won't be like public for you guys to play, but he'll be redoing the way that we do airstrikes and call-ins to make it more efficient and memory performant. You'll notice that your RAM utilization will go down, your VRAM utilization will go down, your hitches will go down, because there were things that we did systemically in older builds via blocking loads and synchronous loading that were not correct. That should have been asynchronous loading, where the idea is, the concept behind it is that when you load an asset, you load it like, I guess you could say a couple seconds before you need it. So the processor, the video card, the RAM has time to load it into memory, and then you get it ready for play. Instead of requiring the game engine to load it in that frame, in that moment, with no time given for anything. Which is why sometimes when you open a UI menu, sometimes when you build a unit, you might go from 50 to 30 frames. You might go from 90 to 60. Because that's a blocking load, basically saying, I don't care about anything else that's going on in gameplay. I want to load this first, then I'll load other stuff. I don't care. And that is a problem. So that is going on in terms of his tie as a cleanup. I'm taking complete and utter control from based off of the prototype that we've built over the last 2 years of pandemic, and I'm redoing it from the ground up, basically by myself. And the idea is that we had a poll. The poll on Discord basically said that everyone from like 99.9% voted for basically having a custom game option where they can turn off Chelsea and the lieutenants. So myself and Chris discussed that for a couple hours yesterday and today, and we came to a conclusion or a direction for that. Now, the direction that we came up with is just kind of, because this is going to be my first week of January, is I'm just ripping apart Pandemic, and I'm redoing it based off of what we know now people want. Because I know I'm kind of going back here a little bit, but I want to hammer this home, is that the game has always been, okay, we had this initial plan, but we are willing to cave and adjust and bend based off of community criticism, feedback, and really good ideas. And I know some people have been like, well, we don't have a goal. We don't have like a roadmap. It seems like we're just always jumping over the place. Now, the problem is that when someone like Terminal, Mana, Ghost, Nova, Shepherd, these people come to us and they give us really good that we didn't originally consider, we put them in. And that sometimes made it to where things took a little bit longer than people liked, or they weren't features that people necessarily liked or wanted. So that has also kind of been a ripple effect that has helped us and hurt us in some ways. And that's something that we need to work on in terms of basically kind of finding a balance of that with everything else going on. But for what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be building it from the core for this new Pandemic mode, this revamp, and this 3-week sprint to get you guys a build by February, early February, mid-February, is to basically implement a branch-based system where when you go into the main menu, you're going to choose Pandemic or you're going to choose some kind of like traditional zombie mode. We were throwing around names like, God, what was the name I mentioned earlier, Chris? Do you remember?
Never actually said a name.
Damn it, I said it, but I
you said
forgot
Derek
it now.
had an idea, but you never told me what it was.
Hey, Rand, I said it earlier, but I forgot it now. But regardless, the idea is that you'd have these 2 modes in Pandemic. And the idea is that the only thing that changes is how the virus starts, basically. There's no, obviously, you have 2 paths. The left one's Pandemic, as you guys know, with all the systems and features that you guys have grown accustomed to. The right one would be some kind of like traditional zombie mode, where the idea is that it's the, what's the terrorist organization?
Movement.
The Crow movement, I have a brain fire, sorry. The Crow movement, based off of stealing the virus, because Pandemic mode is non-canon. So we were like, okay, we'll make this work for us. So we'll make it to where the Crow movement essentially steals the canisters from the Voyager Dawn being beached at Monterey Bay. Half Moon Bay, sorry. And yeah, Half Moon Bay. And essentially has 8 or 10 canisters that they basically systemically place around the map when you first start. You could stop some of them, but you can't stop all of them. And they're on timers. So when those canisters release, they spread the virus in those zones. When that happens, there's your entry point into starting to basically get back to the normal, like, okay, now the infection's spreading, the Crow movement is no longer in the game. So yeah, if you can go to those points, you can kill them, you can take the canisters and disarm them. And the idea would be is like, okay, like, maybe you built in this area and you wanted to basically secure that area and you didn't want your neighborhoods to be all dead, or maybe you don't care, I don't know. And the idea is that at least gives the players some autonomy and some control to take control of certain areas and maintain it. And maybe if they want to spread themselves thin and try and basically counter some of the Crow movement, but they won't be able to get all of them. And one of the things that I want to do with this cleanup period in January is I want to take another look at the custom game settings and sit down with people in the public Discord, show them as we're going on these Saturday podcasts every week what I'm doing, well, how we're going about some things, and maybe get their suggestions or ideas. So the idea is next Saturday when we meet, I'll show you guys what I have between now and then in terms of the Pandemic mode. Now it's going to be in layers, so it's going to be basically like you start. There's an intro cutscene. The carrier sails into the bay. And then essentially, Chelsea rolls her location. You choose what you're going to do.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know why Google is doing that. Let me unplug that. And then basically, from there, it's like how far I can go in that week. And the second week is getting into where the infection attacks you, getting those systems back online. The third week is civilians, ambient civilians, dynamic civilian groups. And the fourth week is a playtest. So that's generally how I'm rolling this out, to take a look at every system in isolation based off of every criticism, every point of contention, every performance hit we've ever received in the game, and rebuilding it so then that way it's more performant, and I'm able to basically, like, now I know how all the systems are going to come together and what people want for the game. So that's the idea. And again, a big thing is the custom game option. So I want to take another look at that, and I want to change those settings, and I want to give you guys more control, because I feel like some of them don't go far enough. Like the lieutenants and the infected are great, but like actually having more control over the amount of infection hordes, how many come in groups, giving you the option to turn off the blow up guys, the spitters, and just having standard infecting, having it to where everyone can only walk, setting the max walk speed of them. So if you want to play like the original Romero zombie movie games, you can. Because the biggest thing about pandemic mode is that it's your story, it's your world. It's basically like how do you want your zombie pandemic to unfold? Are you gonna be a good guy? Are you gonna be somewhere in the middle? And that's been the whole core of pandemic mode since inception. So we need to wrap this up. We need to basically get to the point where pandemic mode is solidified, so we can basically do the other features like the doctrines, the DNA, the AI, the operator, the co-op, and then do the campaign, and then do the modding, and then figure out what we're doing for the post-launch support stuff in terms of what do you guys want for DLCs in the future, for expansion packs and whatnot. And we need to just kind of rip off this band-aid and get it done. Because again, I agree with everyone in this room. We floundered in 2024. We need to do better. This is our first step that I feel like that we're going to be doing to do better and to give people the game they deserve, the game they paid for. So you figure, like, because me and Durivar had a conversation for probably 2 hours last night where we were just doing a retrospect. It's sad he's not here today because I was going to actually bring this up, because you figure it's one of those things where it was just kind of like, hey, like, this is how I feel. What do you think, Durivar? And it was one of those things where it was just like, okay, like, we're on the same page. You know what I mean? In terms of like, we need to ratchet this up, and we need to give people what they want. So that is the goal. And at the end of January, we'll have a meeting. The team will have a meeting before the Saturday meeting, that Friday. I'll write another list, and then basically we'll execute. We'll give you guys another rundown at the end of the month. I don't know what the date is of this last month of Saturday for whatever, but it's on the Discord. And then and then essentially, one thing that I kind of breezed over, because I know the priority is pandemic mode. The priority is fixing the performance, the bugs, the pathfinding. So again, like going into February, we have a bucket list, and that bucket list is things like redoing the formation system, finishing the vehicle AI. Let me just open that list because I'm just going off of memory right now. So give me 1 second because I have a PDF for this. So it would be our bucket list for February is resume work on the open world Bay Area. Removing some of basically auxiliary stuff that is supplementary that we need to get rid of because it makes some objects complicated and harder to manage. But that's just too technical to get into right now. Fixing the chaos vehicles, which I mentioned. Pandemic mode is done from my standpoint. Derek joins me. So Derek will roughly be joining me and doing like a 40 to 50% split on helping me finish pandemic mode in about 2 or 3 weeks. To help me finish the systems that he heavily authored, like the dynamic civilian groups and the evacuation system. And then obviously resuming doctrines. We're trying to aim for end of February to wrap it up. But that extra month of March is if something takes longer, something is discovered, someone mentioned something in a podcast, we're like, oh, he has a goddamn point. And then that's why March is more of like a month. So it kind of is situational based off of just how things go and what people say. And then redoing the bridges and their destruction, making it to where you can select units that have health bars, so then that way you can actually know what part of the bridge to damage, what the health of the bridge is. And basically just giving more tooltips and more things that you can select in the world so you can have more meaningful information. Because right now, like I've explained previously, there's a lot of information you guys can't tell about like resistances, what weapons are good against, what weapons are bad against. And you have to just learn based off of just failure. And there needs to be a system where you can select a unit and highlight their icon, and it will tell you what weapons are good against it and what weapons are bad against it. Because there's a whole diagram that Michael has worked out. but most people don't realize it. It's like, the flamethrower is bad against spitters, but it's amazing against standard, infected, and blow up guys. It's the Juggernaut has a really high resistance to the flamethrower. The spitters and the Juggernauts have really, really incredibly high resistances because of their armor and the way that they're built. But you don't know that. So then you can't plan for it. So it's one of those things where like that's something that systemically we need to address. Now, I know I didn't mention a tutorial. At this point in time, I'm not going to do a tutorial. I'm going to do a compromise, which is a video tutorial series that either I'll make or I'll have a YouTuber in our community make. And we'll do that as to buy us some time until we finish 1.3. And then sometime around co-op, we do the tutorial. Because at that point, the game is solidified in my mind, and it's not changing in a major way anymore. Like at that point, pandemic mode is solidified. It's set in stone. It is solid. We can do a tutorial, and then we can move on to the co-op, get that implemented, and then do the campaign stuff. And then let me see. Is there anything? Let me just check my notes here. Other thing is that you figure one of the other things is that as the level designers and the modelers are finishing up their task for the doctrines, basically one of them is going to go off and redo the main menu. Because the main menu is atrocious. And it was made, I think, like 3 or 4 years ago, and it shows. So, and it just looks really bad. So, we were going to go in the Helldivers approach, or the Space Marine 2 approach, and we were going to recreate a portion of Alcatraz, and have that be a prelude into the campaign, and allow you to have a feedback loop into how you're playing the game. So, what we wanted to do is after we initially Chris is doing the initial construction of the blueprints right now. Then we're handing it off to Efren sometime next week, and then we'll show you guys every week as the island's being built out. But the idea is that will be like a little hub that you can press tab and you can teleport around divisions, and you can launch Pandemic, you can launch Horde from there, you can launch the campaign, and you can do the operator area of like customizing our operators from there. So the idea is we can give more characterization to Cirque. We can have a feedback loop into how you're playing the game. Because Alcatraz overlooks San Francisco, Angel Island, and the Bay Area, we can grab metadata from your save files and ideally have it emulate what's going on in your save files in the world abroad. So if bombing an area, or like most of the civilization's dead in an area, if you look outside one of the windows in Alcatraz, Treasure Island's on fire. There's helicopters doing strafing runs. There are jets doing like bombing runs and that kind of stuff. So then that way, we can reinforce and have audio broadcasts and have little TVs turning on to basically have more of a immersive world. And I know it's not the traditional thing that you do for an RTS game, but I'm not using that as a reason to just do the same thing everyone else has ever done since the beginning of time, because that's a bad excuse. The idea is you want to innovate, try new things, and experiment. So that's something that I want to experiment with, is having that Alcatraz as your exception point and your launching off point for starting a new pandemic mission, for customizing your operators, for starting the campaign. Because again, that is Cirque's base of operations, is Alcatraz. And then one thing I didn't mention is that when we resume and we leave this Q1 period of cleanup, we're going to be working on the Bay Area master map, which is a replacement to the open world pandemic map you guys have been playing on right now, which will be one-to-one, pretty damn close representative of the actual Bay Area. Is that when we resume and like we start around like February-ish going into March, worst case, the idea is that you'll be playing on that map now instead of the old one. So you'll have a button to play in San Francisco North, but it will be untextured. So if you want to play around in San Francisco North and experiment and play around with it and see how all that works, you're welcome to. But if you don't want to play in an untextured region, that's, again, it's like 3 to 5 times the size of everything we've ever built. So the idea is that once we get that layer, that map situated and good to go, then our artists will switch over to doing the texturing and the final modeling and do some more detail passes. But I've showed it off in previous podcasts, and we need to just get that into a playtesting stage. And after they finish the last of the doctrines modeling, the only thing left to model right now is the DNA farming atlas for the DNA research tree from Dimitri's standpoint. Other than that, though, the only thing left in the agenda is redoing some of the horde maps, potentially adding some more horde maps from a level design standpoint, and finishing the Bay Area open world master. So I'm having all the manpower going into the Bay Area open world master, fully reserve it, because that's the map that I'm going to be building this new pandemic mode on. I am not going to be building the pandemic mode on the older legacy version of the map, because that makes no sense. So I'll be building building this new mode or this revamp based off of like consideration of the bridges. I'll be redoing the Leviathan AI. I'll be redoing the Juggernaut AI. I'll be redoing the way they spawn in. Everything from a systemic standpoint, based off of all the feedback, all the Steam reviews, all the things that are mentioned in Discord, all the stuff that's mentioned on YouTube, I'll be taking into consideration. And potentially in some cases having ChatGPT search the internet for things that I missed to categorize, chronicleize, and basically streamline it to see if I'm missing anything, essentially. And that's something that I'm doing now. It's something that I'll be starting in a big way come January 1st. Let's see here. Let me pull up my list. Because, yeah, January 1st is... technically it's December 30th. I lied. Because you figure there's 2 days in. So technically I started 2 days on a new pandemic mode. Because you figure the start of the week is December 30th. But anyhow, that's it in a nutshell in terms of everything, the initiatives, what we're trying to do, what's going on. I didn't want to get too much into technical details, but again, the idea is at the end of January, we will have Alcatraz, the show. If everything goes to plan, we'll be able to do a patch on experimental. You guys can walk around Alcatraz, you can explore it, give your feedback. It'll be very light on the voice acting. It'll be very light on the animations. Those will come in passes as there's more budget allocation for them, and as the major line items are situated. But again, that main menu map needs to go. It is horribly ugly. Not a deal. Okay, so I think that I've hit upon everything that I set out to say. Damn, I was hoping our host would be here so he can kind of interject some fun into the conversation. So that's another thing, is that we're going to be looking for a couple other co-hosts to basically help run these podcasts. So if anyone in the community is interested, that wants to, I want a nuanced opinion where it's like basically people that maybe don't necessarily always agree, people that do agree maybe, I don't know, like I want different sides of the table. So if there's anyone here that thinks that they want to help out on the podcast, want to, be one of the hosts that maybe comes in every week or every couple of weeks and just kind of helps inform the decision, and you feel like you're correct, because we want to turn these podcasts and let's talk about zombie movies, let's talk about video games, let's all talk together, let's have a sense of meeting each other, and then that way you guys can kind of see like where we're coming from for some of the things and kind of see what also inspired the game. But anyhow, I don't know, is there anything, Chris, you want to throw in before we open it up to the Q&A?
No, I think you covered pretty much essential.
Okay.
Nothing else really exciting into after Q1.
Okay. Yeah, because you figure again, like what he's saying is that once we get this cleanup done, we're going to go into the circuit doctrines hard. Because with all these new systems refactored, all these systems refined, instead of adding a new ability and it taking days, 10, 20, 30 minutes, the most time-consuming process is sending it off for requisition to a concept artist to make us a 2D art. Adding a new structure into the game, streamlined, easy. A new person can add structure into the game potentially in 10, 20 minutes. Again, the most time-consuming process is what's going on to it, what UI needs to be designed to it. And the doctrines and the airstrikes, because you figure they need to be restructured, they need to be cleaned up, they need to be organized a little more better for scalability and being able to expand these systems. And again, I feel like it's a shared responsibility where we all made the mistake. It'd be a bad leadership for me not to take that. It's not my fault. Thing where like everyone kind of contributed to it, I feel like, on the team, and that we just have to learn from our mistakes and fix it, essentially.
But it's mostly Azula's fault.
It's mostly my dog Azula's fault as well. Yeah. If you guys have seen her in the channel, I post her in the channel on Discord every once in a while. It's for when she looks at you for like whenever you like leave the house or apartment rather. Okay, so I think that we've covered everything in its entirety. Obviously, the developers were gone this week for holiday, for New Year's. Well, Yeah, and for like the Christmas, so nothing got done from a development standpoint because they need to celebrate the holidays with their family. But come next week on Monday, we're hitting it hard. And essentially, now we're going to open up the floor for a discussion, questions, concerns, X, Y, and Z. I would remind everyone, please, 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 please go onto the Steam post and vote on the poll of how we did this year. Because like me and Chris were talking about this before, I think like close to 200 people have voted, really closer to 1,000, couple thousand for an accurate sample size. Basically seeing how we did this year so we can kind of accurately judge. And again, I'm going to be reading what people write. Chris is going to be reading what everyone writes in terms of like the section where you guys can write like, what are you excited for? What do you wish we did better? What suggestions do you have for the team? I'm going to be writing it all. I'm going to be feeding into a program and having it basically write up like the most common things people mention to streamline it. So please, 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 please go and comment that or vote on that on the Steam thread. And I'll put it in the chat in a moment. But what I want to do now is I want to segue into the Q&A section and just basically, see what you guys are thinking. So if you guys have a question, feel free to put it on YouTube, to put it on Discord, or to put it on the Steam Store broadcast. And I will do my damnedest to answer your question. And again, the same thing for Chris. If you have a question about lore, or gameplay, just generally anything, you can also direct it towards Chris because he's the writer, game designer. He did the books and all the other fun stuff. Okay, so let me open up the chat here. Then let me open up the YouTube chat. I have the Steam community chat on, so I'm watching. Let's see what kind of questions you guys have here. I think people have been talking on YouTube, so I will catch up there and answer some questions, and then we will go from there. Okay. So Silent Crafter asks, well, he would love an option to let guards patrol and walking mode between 2 points. We have a patrol mode in the game right now as it stands. So unless I'm misunderstanding, we do have that for like having a patrol mode. So Silent Crafter, if you want to elaborate on that question or you got a little more details, I can address that. So Jesse asked the question on Discord. Any thought on ever bringing back first-person mode as opposed to third-person? So I believe we made the change about 2 years ago. And that change was informed based off of like... Essentially, we were coming to the conclusion that we felt third-person might fit it a little bit better after playing World War Z and a couple other games. Sheer amount of invective and the FOV perspective and how large the world was, we were like, well, maybe we should go third person because it would also simplify the animations, allow us to give the weapons to all the weapons the operator get. All the weapons that the normal circuit can get, the operators can get when we get to that because they share the same rig. So then it would allow us from an indie team to do more with less. And at the same time, you can see your character. It's easier to see around the world. I personally, if we had the resources, the time, and the money, I would reintroduce as like a Ghost Recon Breakpoint, like kind of first person. Or you could use it for precision aiming. And we've prototyped that. We have source code for it. But it comes down to having one animator, one character modeler, and one animator just does everything. So it's a lot for one person to do. So it was one of those things where it was like, if I get the resources, you bet your ass. But it's more so being realistic with our time constraints. And I've had to learn that the hard way, is I have to sometimes cut things and make the hard decisions in terms of like, how do I get the game out? It was like removing the male and female presets for some of the characters. That was affecting us in thousands of dollars. That money could be allocated to the programmers, the level design, in more meaningful ways that would give people more content. And it was the same thing with that, where it was like, should we keep going down this first-person trajectory? Or should we, A, go down the third-person trajectory, flesh that out? It's easier to maintain. It's easier to build up. realistically, it works better from the confines of my mind of how I envision gameplay to operate when we get the co-op in, where I was like, if we blow up and we get more people, I imagine when we get the co-op, there's going to be an uptick in terms of sales and everything else. So the idea would be is we'd use that to increase the production value of what we plan for the campaign, to look at older systems and be like, well, how can we do this better? Can we add first person now? What will that look like? Like that kind of stuff. So again, it's in my mind. I'm thinking about it.
Also has to just be done good and not just implemented. Because we can put that stuff in,
yes,
but it may not be too fun or look good.
I don't want it to. It's like what people tell us right now, where like they're like, "Is the third person a gimmick? Is it like what do I do? Like like what is the unique in there?" And there was a guy that was here last Saturday that was drilling into me for that. No problem. I get where he's coming from. I've thought about that for the past week in terms of what he said. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I think it was Joha. Yeah, I think it was Joha, actually. So you figure it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I need to take that into consideration when we get to the operator card and that kind of stuff. For the RTS aspect of making it like Battle of Middle-earth 2 commander general thing, but also having the aspect of like Division, Resident Evil 4. What do people expect? And like if you want to see an example, go look on our YouTube channel and go look at the operator showcase that we made, which was a proof of concept for how I want the operator to play as a starting point, mind you, kind of deal. So let's jump to another question because I'm ranting, and let's see. Nothing on Steam. Steam is ghost mode, so we'll go to YouTube. Let's see. So, what Coster from YouTube asked, previously, players voted on changes to the infected. Will you be changing animation models to actual infected, or will there be a whole revamp? Excellent question. So, that is exactly what Michael's working on in January. I breezed over that, but essentially the issue is that basically we're going to be using some of the extra production budget that we'll be getting from December sales from Steam to essentially push that into a higher production value for the character models. So one thing that we've been learning over the last couple of years was having it to where we can have different body types. If everyone's ever played State of Decay, Back 4 Blood, those are good examples. Where the idea is that you can have bigger people, small people, skinny people, and they all share the same animations and they all work. And Epic has had a huge push in the last 3 years, technically 2 years, to improve their retargeting live and make it performant. So now we're able to easily take a base animation and apply it onto different body types. So that's something that Michael's going to be doing. And we were talking extensively about this last December before he went on his little holiday stuff to visit his family. And essentially the idea is that we were going to have I think we were talking about 10 or so new civilian meshes and then 2 meshes for every subgroup. So it'd be anarchists, or technically the rebrand of the anarchists that are sub-factions. So they're not really anarchists. They're more of anarchy group. They're not, anyway. So the that group would have 2 sub-variants of aesthetics. The militants would have 2 versions of aesthetics. The normal civilians would have 2 versions of aesthetics, and then you would have the civilians, the ambient civilians that walk around the city that do the evacuation system. They would have the greatest pool. So based off of initial estimates, we were looking at 50 or so variations of civilians across the board, and that would just be as simple as changing some t-shirts, putting on different hats, changing their pants, different variations and permutations based off of Left 4 Dead. To get more mileage and more variation and just kind of get to the game to the point where it's starting to look more solidified and like an actual polished final game that's about to leave early access the next year or so. So yes, and part of that is once those variations are done, Michael will take one of them and do the proof of concept for the standard infected. That is going to be the final mesh. Now, if it comes down to a point where he doesn't, because Michael by trade is not a character modeler. He's an acquired talent that he's learned through just research and X, Y, and Z, and just knowing modeling and working at Ubisoft previously on the Division like stuff in the past. So the idea was that he saw enough, learned enough to be able to learn that on our team. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now if he does, it comes down to like if we get to the standard infected and they're not looking as gnarly and disgusting as the concepts, that might be an example where we let him take it as far as he can take it visually, and then we earmark that in the future to have a specialist or a contractor come in, around co-op, after co-op, to just do that final layer coat paint. Where it's like we have the base model he made, but we add in the growths, the skin tearing, the fungal growth, like to make them more like raw, like in post over time. But at least it's more of a iterative like process where we're just slowly kind of pushing forward at least, so you guys can see the tangible progress. So I did YouTube. There's nothing on Steam, so now I'm gonna jump over to Discord. I gotta scroll up. Let's see. How many can play when co-op comes out? So the base minimum is 4. And those can be 4 people all playing an operator, 4 people playing all RTS. I'm going to push for more. Can't answer that question until we get to actually implementing it. Because in my mind, I want to go to Silica amounts. Well, you could have maybe 4 to 6, 8 more players that are playing in a third-person perspective as troops on the ground. Like they're doing missions for you. They're searching for civilians. They're doing evacuations. They're building stuff. Because part of the operator, like what Joha was drilling into me last week for, which nope, I love that. No problem. I love when people get is basically giving them more gameplay value, giving them more purpose. So basically, it's like okay, like. Something I haven't talked about publicly is having it to where, like, okay, we have the CPO as a prototype of being able to build, being able to order units, being able to command those units. That's why I want a couple weeks to a month just for the operator or for co-op. So then that way you can play the game on the ground as a TPS, third-person care shooter, and you're still playing an RTS game. You're still ordering people around. You're still able to do stuff. So... yeah, but anyhow, let's get back to it. So, co-op. Let's go back to YouTube. Nothing yet. No, nothing on YouTube. All right, so Steam's clean. Discord. Let's go. Where is a good place to catch up on lore? The guy asked. Your best places would be the book, the anthology. There's 2 books. There's the anthology. The books are on Steam. The books are on Amazon. The anthology is only on Steam. They explain the premise of the campaign and what we're going to be like operating around in terms of like how that's going to play out and who all the characters are, who all the players are. And it's a very good inception that Chris wrote.
No.
Hey, Chris, you answer this question.
Well, you just did. Yeah,
I know, but talk about
well,
it.
There's
talk
2
books,
and we were just talking today about getting some more done. So I'll be working on those. Actually, next year is next week, so next week, I guess. Yeah, anthology. I mean, a lot of people have kind of forgotten that exists, but it definitely is there. That covers like the first, I don't know, quarter of the book, the main book.
12 chapters.
Yes, the 12 chapters. It has wonderful art, and so if you wanna, it's just it's voice acted, right? I haven't looked at it for a while.
It's a visual novel, and the idea is it's gorgeous art, and I love comic books, I love anime, so it was our little thing of like, hey, let's do a viral thing to just kind of get more people involved in the show. Like, what's the universe we're building here? Because I'm huge for ARGs, I'm huge for like. Basically like Easter eggs and basically just kind of like backstory, like the Halo books, the Halo, or the BioShock book for BioShock. Nobody knows it exists. It's a beautiful book. It makes you feel horrible when you play the games because then the backstory of every NPC and everything that happened years up to the fall of Rapture. I love that. So like literally like that kind of stuff is what we're trying to build here. So it's a complete investment. into basically what we're trying to do here, from a gameplay standpoint to a story perspective.
And a lot of
Um,
the content
it,
from the books will be featured in the campaign. So it kind of gives you an
yes,
insight as to what the campaign would be like, and just all the extra little tidbits that you're definitely not getting right now in pandemic, because pandemic doesn't even scratch the surface to what the actual story is going to be.
yes. And that's a good point, because again, pandemic is your story, your universe, your world. We just throw all the tools to you, and then it's up to you to kind of figure out what kind of story are you going to tell this time you play. So, yeah, campaign is going to be a completely different ballgame. So let's see, and that's another reason why I'm building Treasure Island as the main hub, because I want that immersion, I want that storytelling, I want to be able to have like, I'm sorry, that's why I want to build that, to basically just kind of start setting up the breadcrumbs for what comes next. So essentially, YouTube, nothing on Steam. Let's see what we got. Nothing still on YouTube. Okay, well, anyway, let's see what's on Discord. Let's see. So I don't know why I can't see your name. Streamer mode's hiding it, but a person that starts with a C with 3 dots for some reason said, have you guys thought about having different ammo types for certain weapons, like having a black tip or a silver tip ammo for AP on the harder armor targets, or dragon's breath shells for the shotgun shells? Could use DNA to unlock, still needs to be purchased per unit, but the trade-off for the higher damage or armor piercing is lower overall ammo count, and if an AP round hits a soft target, it could over-penetrate to hit another zombie or DT for beta civvy.
Yeah, I want my John Wick moment.
Me and God damn it! Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's the dragon breath scene from the last one. Love that movie. God, that last scene was fucking gorgeous. But like, so when it comes to that, myself and Michael have talked about that. We believe the best way forward is kind of how like Division 1 did it, where it's like an ability that you enable. That would be like it's an ability where they just change the magazine. So like that was another reason why me and Michael did a really good push to redo the ability system, so he can go in, he can prototype ammo types, and then he can find stuff that works, come back to me and Derek. We can implement it from a C++ standpoint, or in some cases push it out in entirely the blueprint side of things, let you guys play test it and try it out for different abilities. And that was another reason why we're going to be like integrating the ability system with the doctrine system during this Q1 audit, because then we can add in doctrines that are like abilities of ammo types. It's the same reason why it was kind of breezed over on our roadmap, but Efren right now is finishing up the 4 or 5 grenade types we're adding to the game. And those grenade types will be based off of like different classes can use different types of grenades, like a flashbang, Semtech, C4, a normal frag grenade, incendiary grenade, smoke grenade, to give you guys more tactical options when we get to the doctrines. They're getting modeled. Here, I'll actually show you. Let me just pull up those pictures from last time, actually. Where is it? Efron's reports channel. And then let me just open up these images. All right, here we go. And then let me open them up in Edge. Hold on one second. So let me switch over to it on OBS. So share screen. So like here's an example of like a C4 that he's working on right now, where the goal is that he'll be finishing this up next week, and then we're going to the spec ops, or the revamped flashbang grenade. Oh wait, hold on. Let me just copy that. Or the flashbang grenade, or like, we're basically just working on the sub detail, getting everything ready for animation, the smoke grenade, and just getting everything situated. So then that way, like, it's the final mesh, it's optimized, and it's using nanite and all the other best practices that we've learned over the years. And it looks good. So those are things that basically like he's doing right now before he starts on the main menu in a couple of days. So he has like till Wednesday, Thursday to finish the remaining grenades. So like when we meet next Saturday, then I'll be showing the final grenades. And then from there, we should have an initial block out, because we're going to be using photogrammetry the same way that Stalker 2 did their world, where I went to Alcatraz and I took thousands of photos. We're going to take those photos, we're going to feed them into a program. That program, using AI, generates the models. We take those models, we optimize them, we manually texture them and UV them, and then we can theoretically model the entirety of Alcatraz in a couple of days. And it'll look just like it does in real life. And then we just have to spend the time either using Megascan libraries or texturing the assets ourselves via texture libraries, or use the photos that we took from Alcatraz when I did the day and night tour about 2 years ago to basically build the rest of the island. So it's going to be fun because it'll be the first time we're experimenting with photogrammetry. But if it works out, we can also roll that out to parts of San Francisco North to speed up that process for the building construction. So YouTube, any questions? For a question about Major McScuffy, we did address a couple of questions for co-op. You can actually rewind the video later on, post the thing, and just catch up on that. Just keep in mind, this entire discussion is always saved as a VOD on YouTube. So you can always go back, rewind it, and catch up. So then that way you don't feel like you're going to miss the actual main show. So let's see. Question. There's nothing on YouTube yet. Something just watching. Let's see. Whoever it was referencing having the patrolling soldiers walk rather than an infinite jog. Maybe let me think about that one. That's not a bad idea. It's more of like a small quality of life change. Because there's no stamina system, we just defaulted everyone to be moving at the quickest speed. Where I can see where you're coming from, because maybe you just want them to move a little bit slower, so that it's easier to manage like holes in your patrol line or whatever. Okay, Jesse, I'm going to brutalize your last name. Macaris basically brought up a very good point on Discord, where he said, one thing I've kind of noticed in the latest builds, the last year or so, is a lack of swarms of zombies that usually attack the base from the start. That, my friend, is one of the major things that I'm seeking to address with this revamp pandemic mode. Because the problem is that the infected, when we introduce the dynamic civilian groups and the ambient civilians, they get over encumbered and bogged down by trying to kill them versus the real threat, which is Cirque. So in that, we've almost shot ourselves in the foot, that game design-wise, by splitting them up, where they're taking 25, 40% and they're pushing them towards people you don't even see on the map. Then they're taking the remaining 70%, 60%, maybe even less sometimes, and they're pushing it towards you. So that's why sometimes you'll get a rapid mobilization where you'll get like everybody just coming at you out of nowhere and you get manhandled. But then sometimes you'll be pushing them and it's like nothing. Like it's like literally like a drought. So that's something that I aim to tackle going into the first 2 weeks, where my goal in that first 2 weeks of January is to implement the infected, the Chelsea, and obviously the non-Chelsea mode as well, because they both diverge into the same gameplay loop after like 5 to 10 minutes, and essentially have it to where they actually are a threat and they don't over-prioritize on the dynamic civilian groups. Because if they do, then, well, we know what happens. Because there's a fixed budget. And I see someone ask the question about the population of the game. As it stands right now, there's a possibility that we could increase the population, but I can't confirm nor deny that this time, because you figure in a live build with no gameplay running and it's just the raw level, in the editor, raw, you're getting 200 frames. Which means that once we start adding in the AI, the gameplay mechanics, the movement, the pathfinding, in game design, everything is diminishing returns, I think is the term I'm thinking of, where everything you add into a game takes away from your frame rate. Everything. So the idea is there are things that have constant costs, and there are things that have dynamic costs, where it's like they can fluctuate at time, and then you have ones that are constant, like the movement component. And sometimes you can mitigate those by tick rates and other stuff like that. But if too many characters start moving at the same time, too many people take damage at the same time, and you're over a threshold of a certain amount of units, the engine cripples and just falls apart. So that's another reason why we've kind of left it at the 120, 200 until we can get to a time where we can either make a major breakthrough on the movement component, and because right now the major thing stopping us is the perception, it's the movement, And then it's the pathfinding would be a problem at that point because pathfinding has been negligible for the time being because we found ways to mitigate that. And we spaced out our calls. But the other two are standard epic Unreal things. And I think that World War Z only got a max of like 200 running. What's that game? Dave, what's the one with the bike and the zombies? The bike and the zombies?
The bike and the zombies?
Yeah, you have a bike and you build it and you repair it and you have zombies and
Days Gone.
Days Gone, that's another game. But they're Unreal Engine 4 and I think they got a max of like 300 characters. So you figure like 300 to 500 population is when like most developers AAA just give up. They're like, we can't do it anymore. The engine falls apart. The tech's not there. We can't do it. So you figure as it stands right now, Cirque's at 120 max, 200 if you push the custom. The infected are around 200, 300 give or take. The civilians are around 100 using a lot of tricks. And then we still have to add Fenrir, which is going to be roughly around another 100, 120. And they're the final faction when we get to them. So you figure it's one of those things where it's like I have to take into consideration all of the budgets and not overindulge in one section, and then now it punishes and it limits everything else I can ever add into the game. Because if I had my way, I'd give you guys infinite pop, but I can't. Because it's one of those things where like literally the game would fall apart. So I have to keep those constraints in the where they are until everything's in there. We get Fenrir in there. You know, or maybe we find a breakthrough, or Epic finds a hidden space saucer, and like they did for Nanite, and they give us a holy grail for keeping the movement component cheaper or something. But anyhow, back to the questions. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, Not a Narc asked the question. In the pursuit of a more traditional zombie experience that was recently voted on, an option for zombies only taking headshot damage and walking fast shamble instead of running. So, no on the headshots for now, but I will do the walking and running. And I will make it to where you can configure it as a compromise when I do the custom game options. I'm going to write that down in my reports channel on the development Discord. Give me a moment. All right, got it. So I will do that at least. Because I'll just put that on my list so I don't forget it for the custom game options. Plus, I mentioned the running, walking previously.
Yeah, I think also like people tend to forget these are more like the rage virus. So it's like body damage does kill them. They're not like the undead.
Yes, I think that he's getting at it more from a standpoint of
the
like
Romero classic stuff.
Simulation. Yeah, or the original Resident Evil 1. You know, like those where it was like, I mean, like.
I
remember playing the original.
I do like the headshot thing. It's just that's like really hard doing RTS and with how many people are, but it does. One thing I like about the World War Z novel is, you know, like they had to redesign their military doctrines where everybody all went back to like single shots. But on the scale of this game, that would be like really hard to do.
It'd be almost impossible. Couldn't think about it, right? Is that you figure like. Right now, they fire for a center mass, and if they get a headshot, it's happenstance because of recoil. Now, the snipers, based off of code, will aim a little bit higher, but the idea is we programmed all the AI to always generally shoot center mass, so even if they miss, they'll still get an arm. They'll still get a leg based off of spread. Or sometimes they'll get a head if they're going fully automatic. So you figure it's one of those things where it was just like, and keep this in mind, is that when you have more, like let's say you do what you're suggesting, and you have a hit model like CSGO, that is incredibly expensive from the calculation of every bullet, checking the bodies. So when you do that, every infected mesh now is more expensive, like computing them per se. So it's one of those things where like, I don't know if we can technically do that.
Like guys, it's like a little insight to game design. Sometimes you're just limited by what you can really do as opposed to what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Because you figure it's one of those things where you're limited by computer architecture, what the minimum spec is, and just engine capabilities, what you can actually R&D and build in the engine yourself versus what's going to be pushed down to you by Epic or your first partner that makes it, like Amazon for Lumberyard or Epic for Unreal or Unity for Unity. So yeah, that those are things where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So let's see. Another question. Oh, here's one. I can't see your name. It starts with an O and it has a Discord yellow emoji thingy because for some reason streamer mode's screwing me. But would there be a chance that once hostile factions are more developed, there could be more chance of getting a vehicle unit? Perhaps if they get strong enough, which could serve as a harder foe mini-boss of sorts. I'm unsure what effect it could have on neutral allied factions. Will factions eventually be able to fight each other? Okay. So as it stands right now, factions do get over on each other and kill each other. It's just you don't get to see it because you figure by the time you come across a faction, they're dead, and you don't know if it was the raiders, the civilians, or the infected. We do roll personality types. We do roll, like, do people hate each other? Do they start to hate each other over time? Now, that system is a foundational system for when we get to 1.4. Because you figure 1.4 is the big whammy of the campaign, but that added resources after we get the campaign done, the co-op done, is going towards the campaign and the co-op. Sorry, not co-op. It's the main factions where basically like they're a level above the civilians and the militants and all of them, where the idea is that they're police and they're Natalie. And the idea is that I've gone back and forth over the years with people of what they want. And it feels like it's a cultivation of things that have been addressed and brought up in these AMAs over the years, where it's like being able to give them orders. They can give you missions. And that's the gist of it. Giving them orders, they can give you missions. There's a reward system back and forth. But then we also have 3 base vehicles planned out for every, the major, like the police and the, are we calling them the anarchists still, Chris?
No, there's survivalist.
Okay, yeah. So the survivalist group and the police group, basically, or PS's group, we have 3 weapons, 3 vehicles mapped out: a helicopter and 2 ground vehicles for each one, which is basically a light vehicle and a heavy vehicle. So for the militant group, whatever, there would be a tactical, a battle bus, and a stolen police helicopter. And then for the police, it would be a patrol beat cop car. I think it was
a SWAT van or something like that.
The SWAT van from the SWAT van they use, basically, like the little one, the one from like Die Hard, like those kind of ones.
The Cougar.
Well, I thought there was remember we were debating at the time if we wanted to go with the Cougar because the Cirque had the JLTV that was still technically the same, that we were considering doing the Die Hard style where it's like that Greyhound from Company Heroes that they sometimes use. Yeah, it was like a Greyhound that was modified for police use that sometimes they use. It's like kind of like the one you see in Die Hard 1. So we were playing around with the modified modern version of that, but again, that might change. And then the last one was a police helicopter. And then there were 3 archetypes. And the idea would be is that that's in 1.4 because ideally we want to expand them a little bit further because we were going to give them buildings. We were going to give them personalities. So the idea is that each one fills a role of immersion, storytelling, atmosphere. Where like when you first start the game, the police are fighting the infected. The police have headquarters and police stations and substations all over the city. And then as they start to lose, they fall back and they start to vassalize and work with civilian groups, and then, the other group, which is more of like on the fringes group, they're more inclined to be in the shadows, cloak and dagger, more like the GLA. So that was the idea that we were going for when it came down to them. Now, we did have an earlier build that we had like a year ago where they were so samey and so generic that we ended up taking them out until we could give them the time of day and the attention they deserved. So yes, we did have an early build. Like I think it was a year ago. We had like a police group running around, and we had the early version of the anarchists. But they were like basically two groups that just did the same thing, started at different locations, and there was no distinction amongst them, and that frustrated the all hell out of me. To where because we didn't have the resources and the time with two programmers to do what was needed to do that, plus everything else that was on our docket. We're biting off more than we could chew. So it was one of those things where I made the decision, okay, let's take that out. Let's focus on what's there. Let's focus on the core. Then let's get to that when we get down to it in 1.4. So yes, what you're mentioning is on my radar. It's on the roadmap, and I'm very conscious of it because you figure. And yes, Jesse, like you said, the police faction is coming back. There's no way in hell that we do the campaign and we don't bring them back. I don't know in what universe that exists because they're all their models. Everything is required to do the campaign. So the idea is by doing the campaign, you guys get additional content in the pandemic. It's a supplementary content that, is polished up and more refined because then at that time we use everything we've learned over the years to do what we did for the Cirque. Made them sexier, look better, better models, better animations, you name it, kind of deal. Let's see, what else have we got? I answered the question about the unit cap. Let's see. No other questions yet. Let me check Steam. No. Okay, so then let me go back to Discord and we'll wrap this up in about 10 to 20 minutes. So 10 to 20 minutes more questions. Then we'll wrap it up. And then basically I'm going to go release the build what we talked about in the beginning of the discussion on a private beta open. So give it 5 to 10 minutes after the podcast ends. Close your Steam, reopen it, go to the Cepheus Protocol Experimental, go to beta, choose the beta for today's date, and then play that until Monday, Tuesday when we fix those critical bugs for evacuation. Because it has better pathfinding, it has better optimization, it has a buttload of bug fixes, you name it. And you figure it's just, again, that evacuation bug and the vehicles not being done is what's stopping me from releasing it out to everyone. Because I just don't want to replace the current non-chaos vehicles with chaos vehicles and then deal with the influx of bugs and like feedback when we are doing this whole revamp. And once we start the revamp, there's no take backsies. It's all in, basically, because we're tearing apart the game and redoing parts of it. So once we start that process, there's no reversal process to like patch the old build. That's why I don't want to release it on public, because then that'd be another week or two of that, and then the whole timeline gets pushed back later into January. We just need to rip off the Band-Aid, get it done. Yes, Cookie. I just answered your question too. Let's see. What else is that? So, not a narc. What I'll do for you, what you're suggesting about making the infected harder, is I will give you a health mutilator that you can set for every class type of infected. How does that do? So you can simulate them being Romero-type zombies by doubling, tripling, quadrupling their health, or lowering their health. So then that way you can get the experience that you want out of the game. So I will do that. Let me write that down for Monday. Health slider option. Okay, got it. And then Joyful Brick asked, would one of the boatload bug fixes fix the problem with it? Yes, I fixed that. I tested it on my Steam Deck just for you. And I tested it again recently just to make sure there were no incidents. So you should be good to go. You can opt into the beta on your Steam Deck, and you can go back to playing, and you'll have a better performance as well. Because you figure, I think I did a post show last weekend after this on my personal Twitch, and I was playing the game, and I got this really crazy bug, a hitching issue, and it was because of the evacuation system and a cascading issue with the move orders for the buses occurring the movement system too often and not having a proper limiter in there. So we put a limiter in there. And I at the same time, that actually helps your performance as well across the game. Because when I was doing that, I was going through and I was fixing other systems and profiling them on Saturday on stream on my Twitch. So I actually fixed a bunch of other performance issues and discovered a bunch of other performance issues when I was playing the game. I ended up doing game design on my Twitch. So that was fun because I got like 5 people that were sitting in there just asking questions about game design. So again, if you guys want, I can try and do a post show every time we do this and go play the game. Then we do a little bit of game design and talk about the back end. You know, every once in a while, if you guys want. It just kind of depends if people want me to like play the game for an hour or 2 after every podcast. But anyhow, let's see. Could there be a time mission? Oh, sorry, I can't say your name, but C asked again. Could there be a timed mission failure option for if there's too much infection and you can't get it under control, the government decides to nuke the area and you have X amount of in-game time to get it under control before the bomb drops?
I mean, that is what the Cepheus protocol is.
We never implemented that, though, remember? We made it tied to Winter's death. Then we made it tied to the carrier dying. But the problem is it's so goddamn hard for the carrier to die. Like, you literally have to drive it up a Leviathan's ass. Or you have to, like, park it in the stupidest location ever and let a juggernaut repeatedly throw a rock at it. Yeah, so he is right. We have to address that.
They're demonic whales.
Maybe they're demonic whales, but we can't do that because of the budget yet. So, but we're saving the infected to the AI card, and based off of what we have for excess for our budget, we'll allocate that for a character modeler for doing Chelsea's Elite Guard, the whale, and a builder for the infected. But for right now, when I'm doing this 1 month sprint plus what's needed in February, it barely bleeds over. Hold on, let me think. Okay, what if we, Chris, add that into the game? Well, we basically say that if 70 to 80% of the world is taken by Chelsea, a doomsday clock starts, and you have 10 minutes to bring that number down or lose, and they nuke the whole island or thermobatic bomb it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's what the Cepheus protocol means. That's the final solution to solving the problem.
If you lose.
So it's like if we add that in there now for pandemic, that would be kind of fun and add a lot of tension.
Let's do it. All right, so then I'm putting that on my notes as that I will put that in for the first or second week. I will add that loss condition in. Sorry, hiccuping, I don't know why. Loss condition for above, let's do 80% total world infection. So I'll just say that she accumulates land up to 80%, even if all the people aren't dead yet. And it starts like a 10-minute, 20-minute doomsday clock. Now, what I will do is I'll make it to where you can turn that on and off in the options. Because you figure, like, not everyone wants to play that, and people will make it default. But then if you turn it off in the options, and you can just play your chill, casual, turtle game. Where you're just, chilling on an island, dropping mortars on the MRSs, doing strafing runs with the little birds, and you don't have to, because again, there's a reason why people mod out the XCOM 2 Doom Clock. I modded it out. I just want to play the game and appreciate it sometimes and not feel like there's like that anxiety and that rush and everything that you're doing. But it should still be there as an option kind of deal. Because again, I played XCOM 2. I played it for a full week, and I just kept getting annoyed because I wanted to take my time. I wanted to play the game a certain way, but because the developers wanted you to feel that anxiety at all times, it wasn't very accommodating for how I wanted to play it based off how I played XCOM 1. So again, I ended up getting a mod and removing the Doom. I need to play that game again, actually. That and the Fireteam Elite's Aliens game. Oh my god, that's such a good RTS game. If anyone here hasn't played that Fireteam Elite's Alien game, it's literally, I played that game and I was like, Chris, we're buying this for everyone on the team. That's literally how I want to do the campaign. Is literally how. Sorry, is that Dark Descent?
Yeah, the Fire Team is the the shooter team one.
Yeah, it was Dark Descent. Literally, how they do their campaign is literally kind of like how I want to do the campaign for Cepheus. It's like the global thing, the ship, Alcatraz, the hub, the mission, the research, bringing units in and out, the persistent units over constantly building a base every time you do a new campaign mission, like that kind of stuff. It's really cool. I love that game. I think I bought it for like practically everyone in the last sale on Halloween, just for everyone to go and play it as research.
He buys us a lot of games. That's one of the benefits working
God
here.
help us.
I mean,
Lord,
you bought me like
$200
in one day.
Fuck! Don't remind me. No, like literally, I'll buy people games. Like I bought people They Are Billions, Kenshi, Wargaming, Company of Heroes, World in Conflict. We had a World in Conflict multiplayer night one day, and it's just basically because some people, or like they dabble in RTS, but they don't play it enough, or they don't understand every nuance and every mechanic. I grew up playing RTS games. My first RTS was StarCraft 1. So it was like one of those things where it was like, Wargame, definitely. I bought everyone Wargame. We had a whole Wargame night. We had a whole World in Conflict night. It was Red Dragon, actually. And we have StarCraft 2 co-op nights. So you figure it was one of those things where it was like, it was really important to me for everyone to understand if they've never played an RTS game, but they dabble, they've kind of dealt, they played one or two, but they haven't played all of them. They're like, we play it as a team.
Age of Empires.
We did do Age of Empires. We did all of them. Across, like we did Age of Mythology, we did Age of Empires, we did not do Homeworld.
Yeah, I have.
I could not sell them on Homeworld.
Yeah, we never done it.
Yeah, Duravar got me to buy Homeworld.
Yeah, we did Age of Mythology,
but we never played it. Yeah, we did Age of Mythology and we did Retold. I bought everyone Retold so they could see the modern example of a standard in terms of what we should be held to in terms of building placement, civilians, population, global research. Because you figure it was like, when you play other games to get the expectation that players have, or maybe what other people have failed to achieve, even though there was the golden staple of what, like you need to do when you're doing a certain game mode or thing. So I have played Rise of Nations, but I played that a long time ago. Michael played Rise of Nations and today, but I was more of an Empire Earth guy. I played Empire Earth and Supremacy more than I played Rise of Nations. Yes, didn't age well, but it was a beautiful game. Like literally, that was like my drug, where it was StarCraft, the Company of Heroes, to Empire Earth, to and Age of Supremacy in that order, and then it was Dawn of War, Dark Crusade, Winter Assault, the Necron one. I think that was Dark Order. And those are, and Command and Conquer 0 Hour. Oh my God, those are the OGs. I love those games. So it's one of those things where like I just make everyone on the team play them, and I buy them whenever they're on sale, just to be a feedback loop. Or if someone doesn't understand what I'm trying to explain to them, I've just bought those on back catalogs. So it's like, hey, like go and play this game I bought you 3 months ago, bro, and you'll get it. Like. Because, like, I feel like some of the recent developments of, like, the build order queuing and the move order queuing was like, okay, like, let me sit down with my programmer and let's buy him some games and have him go and play it. Let's play it as a group. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what they do, what we can do better, what they're doing better than what we're doing right now. Because, Lord, how I observe, there's a lot of people like Broken Arrow that are doing a lot better, that we played their demo, the last recent beta, just to play it as an experiment to learn what are they doing better. How are their airstrikes better? How are their units better? How are their controls better? How's their collision, destruction, you name it. So I'm always pushing the team to play every possible game there is. Or sometimes stuffing them in the room, buying them the games and saying we're playing this Friday night. You're not going anywhere. That was fun. So yeah, we do that. Let's see. Well, they had the Broken Arrow beta public about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Or was it a month, give or take? Me, Duravar, Dimitri played it, and we streamed it for everyone else. It was like a good month that they had that Broken Arrow beta, and I was taking notes, basically, in terms of like how they do their building, how they do their unit respawning, how cool it is when their units come out of the back of the AC-130 and they actually shoved out, and the parachute deploys. Like that kind of attention to detail, kind of deal, where like my artist Dimitri would be salvaging it if I gave him that amount of time to basically flesh those systems out. So it's like those are things that I'm looking at, and I'm like, damn, we need more money and time. But it comes down to one of those things where it's like, okay, we're gonna have our time. Once we get all these systems in, when things calm down, I can have Dimitri go off in the corner and prototype some stuff like that. I can have Derek go off in the corner and prototype some stuff. And like that's how a lot of things in the game that are like small little intricate details I didn't even ask for. They took upon themselves. Like the shells ejecting from like the Abrams and the little like the when you shoot the vehicles, the physics, like the shock, the cakes, like those things are things that basically like I just gave them a directive, and then they were like, well, I played these games and I wish they did this, but let's see if we could do it. And you don't see that in video games where like you have like that amount of immersion and detail when you zoom in on the units. Like some of my guys on my team, I have to fight them tooth and nail for the schedule. But when it comes down to it, they care so much about what they're doing that basically it's a constant heave and ho about the attention to detail, the quality, the authenticity that goes into these models, of studying blueprints and looking at hundreds of YouTube videos. And, when it's classified and you can't find anything on the internet, you have to just look at like tiny little pixelated images that you can find on Google Images to try and recreate some of the aspects of like the smoke launchers from like the one that we did for like the recent vehicles, or the APS system for the Abrams and all of that that's coming in on the doctrine stuff. Whereas like, there is such a great amount of research and attention to detail that comes in from our team in terms of like the modelers and the level designers and the character creators and Michael and everyone else. They do a fabulous job when it comes down to it.
Have a lot of military nuts.
Yes, Dimitri is ex-military. Michael's ex-military. So you figure they bring a perspective, that I lack. Because me and Chris aren't ex-military. We're just more fans and basically just more so we grew up playing RTS games. So they're able to come in and be like, they don't do that. We were there during Afghanistan. We were there during X, Y, and Z in our reserve stuff. So they can tell us, like, don't do that. Do this. Why are you doing that? And then with Chris's perspective, he's a huge military nuts. He brings in the final perspective of, like, all the research. He's a writer, So he kind of, like, they all balance each other out. It's a juggling act of, like, I guess you could say opinions and the direction of the game and experiences and just kind of figuring out. Because at the end of the day, we have a saying where, like, to a certain degree, it needs to play well. It can look good, but it certainly needs to play well. Like, the gameplay needs to be there. So there are certain considerations and certain things that you have to change or alter in the semblance of having a cohesive, fun game. Because if everything was realistic and you had a logistics chain and you had to worry about bullets coming to your units every 10 to 20 seconds, 30 seconds like in real life, it'd be kind of tedious and boring. Sheer amount of on the game. So it was one of those things where it was just kind of like, okay, we got ammo runners, we got these other systems that we've added based off of watching war movies, talking to Michael, talking to Dimitri, and X, Y, and Z, and just kind of figuring out and structuring it in terms of like real world versus the conversion.
That'll be our next game, military logistics. Have a mechanic work on a jet for 10 hours.
I hate you. Next you're going to say add fucking Gundams. That's like the internal meme on the team is add fucking Gundams.
I love my Gundams.
Like you figure, Lord,
I just binged all the Gundam, the original, and Gundam's Seed, Double Z. So I want my Gundams now.
What's the one with the redhead and the girl with the blue hair, and then the one guy, and they have like that defense team, and it's Japanese.
Oh my god, I don't know how to think about it.
You know what I'm talking? It's like a really popular anime.
Well, that really narrows it down.
All right, I'll look it up in the background because like that one I haven't seen yet, and I know it's one of the most popular mech animes that there are.
Yeah, there you go. Coke, yes, that's like your baby.
That's my go-to, bruh. Code Geass is amazing. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, you should go see it, or I'm disappointed in you. But God, I'll look it up on the other side because I'm annoyed. It's like if I say the name, everyone in the room will know what I'm talking about. It's not Ghost in the Shell. That's a beautiful anime. I'll look it up on my other window and find it. But let me look for more questions. No, it's not Gurren Lagann. I haven't seen that one either. It's on my list. I only know about that show because there's the one hot girl in it. 'Cause I always see like anime and all this stuff for whatever. But yeah, no, I gotta look it up because like you figure, I don't know. There's a movie after it too. But let me see if there's any other questions you boys have or guys have for like guys and girls for stuff. Let's see. Okay, so we got Lost Condition, stuff about Dark Descent. Of course, it'll be often. What Dustlight asked.
Of course, you gotta watch Evangelion.
Okay. Yeah, that's
There you
Evangelion.
go.
That's
Yeah.
because it's the
Yeah.
three people. It's the girl. It's the two girls, the redhead or
Well,
the
it's a
yellow
white
haired
hair
girl.
girl, the redhead, and then the guy.
Yeah, that one. I haven't seen it yet. There's a bunch of movies. I have to watch that because like everyone's always making fun of me about Add a Gundam in it, and I'm just like, that's just the most popular one I've never seen. I need to watch it. It's sad, depressing. But anyhow, let's see. Let me check YouTube's and see if we have any comments or questions that have popped up. Nothing yet there. Okay, going back to Discord. Let's see. Yeah, I literally. I wish there were more.
I mean, you got that one War
Like,
Games,
literally.
dude. I never did play the beta though.
The one that was
Yeah.
in the Game Awards. I heard that one's pay to
Steal
win.
something.
Yeah, I heard it was pay to win, so I haven't installed it yet. I'll let you know. I think I installed it, and then I haven't played it yet because I was waiting for you to play it. Okay, let's see what do we have here. What's in the post-stream update? I don't know what that means.
Nah.
No, I haven't
I
played
haven't done
before.
it yet. I did
I'm
watch
guilty.
the Secret Level episode. I thought that was pretty cool.
Wait, Secret Level
Yeah,
now?
then the Keanu Reeves does the Armored Core episode.
Is it all the episodes
All
or
of
just one? Did you see the Dawn of War one yet? Is it good?
Yeah, it's very Dawn of War like.
Why didn't I get a no? Amazon is
Yeah.
so bad at promoting. Okay, I'm gonna have to load up Amazon, and after I put the build live, I'm gonna go watch Secret Level potentially, depending on if people want me to do a post stream with the build that I'm playing live. It just depends. Because I've been wanting to watch that. Because oh my god, I love video games. Like I've been wanting to see if it sucks. I just don't know if it's gonna suck. Because they put an episode
The
in for
back half
Concord.
is
God help
pretty
us.
bad.
Well, I'm afraid of the Concord section.
Yeah, I haven't watched that episode yet, but I do hear that's like it's good, but sad.
The worst one.
Because it's
sad.
No, I mean like it's the last we're ever gonna see of Concord. So it's like almost makes everything feel pointless because they're promoting something that doesn't exist anymore.
I don't know. I like Marvel Rivals better. I'm guilty. I like that game. Marvel Rivals is amazing. You and I have been feeding on that. You play as the Punisher and I play as Scarlet Witch, and we just we need to get more of our devs to play that too as a game night. We got Efren, we got Derek, and we had a 4-man team one night. But it might be fun to get some people from the Discord involved too, and have like a game night where we get like we make like a team comp from like people on the public Discord, and we just have like a stream where we just stream it. Yeah, and just play Jeff. We need one Jeff on our team to be the just. We'll distract them, and then you come in and you just shark their asses and throw them off the mat while we laugh horribly. Because that oh my god.
My daughter loves that shark.
Yeah, no, you were telling me about that. Like that chef is that damn shark is a goddamn meme at this point. Okay, let's see. Post-stream beta update to Cepheus. Okay, so I'll be streaming that and I'll be releasing it after that. So as a reminder, there's going to be an update after this stream goes offline in about 10 minutes. It's going to be a beta opt-in. You go to the Steam experimental, you right-click it, you opt in, and it'll basically be everything we've worked on in the last 2 months and since there has not been an experimental. And it's a range of fixes based off of bug fixes, performance fixes, vehicle optimization, pattern fixes, you name it. I'll put up a patch note officially on Monday because this is more of like everyone that's on the podcast, everything that's on Discord will know about it. Then I'll open it up on Monday, Tuesday when we get the big bug fixes in that I'm having Derek work on before we, do the other thing. Excuse me. So, any questions, concerns before we wrap this up? Because you figure again, We're gonna be doing this weekly, and I need to get a podcast host that can kind of force us to talk more and have fun and like interject it. So we'll try and get a couple more to balance it out. Like 2 to 3 ideally is what I would do. One with maybe Durivar if you still want to do it, and a couple other cats, and then that way we can kind of get a balanced discussion for anyone that has a microphone. So again, if you're interested, reach out to me on Discord if you want to be a podcast host. I don't care if you're not a YouTuber. You just got to be charismatic. You got to be able to talk and not shy. And I don't care if you're basically not like completely like you don't love everything about the game. Like you can be critical about it. I don't care. As long as you're polite and you're not going to be a dick about it in terms of like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. But, that kind of stuff. So anyhow, let's see. What else is there? Okay, so then I'm going to take another couple minutes for a couple questions to filter in. We're going to give it 4 minutes. We're going to do a 4-minute countdown, and then we'll do the outro, and then I'm going to go work on getting that build out for you. Actually, I'll do the build right now. Since I'll wait for these, well, it only takes a couple minutes anyway. So while you guys run up your last questions for the night, anything for Chris, anything for me, I will go make that branch, and by the time we leave this room, you guys can close and reopen Steam and start playing. Or you can jump into my stream if you want to chill out for the post-show, potentially. It depends if anyone wants me to stream. And I will play it. So we will call it today's date. 10/28/24. Then no password. And we will call it podcast build. No password. And then I will mark it live. 5.5 gigabyte update now live on Steam Experimental if you want to go ahead and opt in. It's also running 5.51x, so it's running the latest version of the engine with the latest optimizations, tweaks. I noticed the performance boost on my high-end rig, so I'm very curious how much people are going to notice between low, medium, and whatnot. Because I think I noticed like a 20 to 30% improvement in performance, so I'm curious. Excellent question, Joha. Oh, you're always hitting me with the bangers. So let me just pull up my notes here. All right. So for your question, first part is basically making it more obvious during this cleanup process is their health increases. Their target acquisition time goes down. For tanks and veterancy, it was going to be reload times. It was going to be their health, potentially adding in the ability so they can self-repair. Because it was one of those things where it was like we were looking at the ability system, and it's kind of like it's an unspoken thing that's not on the roadmap. But it's one of those things where like me and Dimitri and Michael have been talking about this, and it's like the only time left to implement this is either during the cleanup process or if it somehow gets blended into the doctrines. Because like you figure part of the doctrines is making the infantry more well-rounded, more gameplay value, and more giving the end user more information actionable so they can make better decisions. So it's but basically now Narc is saying it's like mirroring 0 hour generals, command and conquer, where it's like small stat changes. And then I need to relook at the veterancy training times because they are abysmally long. If they're like 5 minutes for one unit, that's not worth it. So I'm going to have to look at that and talk with Chris and Michael and see what we can do instead. Because that was a precursor or like a legacy system from what the game used to be in 2020. The game used to be an XCOM type game, but it was real-time RTS. And then the game expanded. Its scope expanded based off of community feedback, what people wanted, talking to people. And these podcasts are like to something. Like everyone wants us to change it and make it more open scale, more open-ended, more like an actual Kenshi. So why wouldn't we? So we made that change, and it's been, I feel like those are one of those legacy systems that probably doesn't get enough flack. And it needs to be audited, kind of deal. So yeah, that's on my list. And you figure hopefully that's enough to make the veterancy mean something by cutting those numbers down and by making the increases more obvious. And then go from there. If it's not enough, tell me. Be like, hey, look, this doesn't feel like it's enough. It doesn't feel like it justifies the time investment. Because there's two types of investment in game design. There's the cost of basically you paying for an item, and then there's the time how long it takes to get said item. And that's the thing, is that we were trying to have a trade-off there where it was like, okay, like you're not paying that much for the extra time, but you're paying the cost investment, the time investment for having those units take longer to train. But because it's not super obvious, the boost you get and the time needs to be like shrunk by like 70-80% potentially, or we need to consider having certain abilities or certain passives only come online based off of veterancy. So it's one of those things where I don't want to go too deep into the weeds just yet. We're game designers. We can do whatever we want based off of what needs to be done, based off of when we get to that point. Because like you figure, so put a pin in that. Wait till we get to that in like a month, two worst case, and we get to that and we're talking about it and we're patting ourselves on the back of like, oh, it's done. If it's not, tell us. Of like, hey, I think you need to go back and take a look at this, and this is why I think that it'd be better, and blah 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 blah. And then it'll start a conversation in one of these podcasts and we can discuss it. I might shut you down, I might not. It comes down to basically the time constraints. It may come down to basically just, is it a reasonable ask or not a reasonable ask, and just X, Y, and Z. But I'm open to having that conversation. And you figure, and as it stands right now, what I just mentioned is all the things at the base minimum that I'm considering to make it fire on all calibers. So maybe you guys will have something else to add when we get to that point. I don't know. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Narc. So let me check YouTube. The YouTubers, nothing. Okay. And then, okay. All right. So then I will have to look into that. See, I'm going to have to change my freaking Discord settings so it doesn't hide people's names, but it still turns on streamer mode because I'm using their generic settings. Cryptsonic Pad? Yeah, that guy. I can't pronunciate your name. So let's see. Am I missing anything else? Okay, Chris. Let's see if I can find you a question. So you can talk more. Hold on. Is there a question for Chris?
The answer is B.
God damn it. Is there a plan? Okay. Maybe. No, you can't answer that one. Because we haven't even discussed that one. That's more speculative. Oh, here's one you can answer, Chris, and then I'll jump on the previous question that I saw that's really hard, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Chris, take the question about the lore.
So, you got lore-wise question: would any civilian try to leave this pandemic island, or have they? Yes, they have tried, but right from the start, there's a Coast Guard base there, and so them and the police they blocked off the Bay Bridge. And then once Zerk moves in, they completely nobody can get off the island. And we do have BART tunnels and general sewer stuff sewer tunnels, and a lot of those have been cut off by the police in Zerk. And then the Chelsea has also gone in there and made it into her little home. So nobody can get off the island. Anybody who tries to leave on a boat or get destroyed by the National Guard or the Coast Guard. But that's going to come into a bigger factor once we start to expand into the other islands and then to the mainland. You can start seeing migrations of people trying to get off.
And keep in mind that what he's talking about is actually conveyed and there are actual entire chapters discussing what he's talking about in the Pierce book. The Pierce book handles the police perspective. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, the main book covers multiple perspectives that lead up to the events of the game, and then it shows you a lot of the Zerk's perspective, and they touch on the quarantine. Like there's a moment where a Coast Guard vessel gets overrun, and the National Guard have to destroy it, and so you will eventually see. We used to actually have the wreck of the Coast Guard ship. And
it's still there. There's a wreck of a Coast Guard clipper off the coast of the huge military base. So you have that huge dock. There's a sunken Coast Guard clipper. If you look very closely, it's still there in gameplay. Because it was a tongue-in-cheek way of referencing the book.
So then Pierce's book, Last Stand, is all from the police perspective, and they try to leave from the island by boats, but then those boats get destroyed, and then they attempt to go in through one of the BART tunnels, but Chelsea's already started to use it to grow the virus. And so the next book would be from next book would be about from Natalie and the survivalist point of view. They don't necessarily try to leave the island, at least not yet, but there should be some alludes to what's going on. And there is one chapter where a reporter manages to break into the island, but she gets slaughtered by splitters.
Wow.
Oh no, she's alive, and you know.
She lives a great life. Nothing happens.
Yeah,
her
and
Don't worry
Splitter,
about it.
they get married. Spitter. They get married and they have a family and all. So
exactly, because like you figure, so the idea is the books are going to inform everything about the campaign. So they're basically our lore. They're like our backbone of like every scenario, every mission, everything that's going to happen. We're using that as a foundational layer of like all the events and chains. Because again, the idea is we want to do it kind of like that Aliens game where it's like you have a global map of the Bay Area, you launch missions, and you do tasks. And the idea, switch that to English. I got to fix that. It defaults to French sometimes. Because I updated every single language to updated them. And for some reason, it defaulted to French. So, yes, I know. I'm going to fix that. Don't worry about that. It'll be fixed on Monday. It's just for some reason any file gets bogged up, but all the languages are updated now. So German, Japanese, Russian, Chinese, all that stuff. But anyhow, the campaign is definitely going to be next year at this point for the guy that just asked that, the guy. And
there was one about spread into the rest of the West, and we did have plans of having all of California and more get infected, but that's for long term goals.
That's long-term goals in terms of basically like get what we have done and then build up the initial foundation of the story. Because you figure like the books convey a lot in terms of like in the anthology, in terms of all the character motivations and how they all come into play and why Cirque is even like responding in the way that they're responding, because they're not expecting zombies, they're expecting Liberty Island anthrax biological weapon that kills everyone. You know what I mean? Terrorists, like normal terrorists. So in the campaign, which is going to be fun, is going to be a stark contrast to Pandemic, because Pandemic is going to be like you're in control, you know what's going on. You went into this game knowing it's zombies. They're coming into this from a standpoint of like like, why is everyone turning into zombies and killing each other and X, Y, and Z? Because they don't really even know what they're going into. So it's going to be really interesting when we get to that point. I personally can't wait until we get to the point working on the campaign once we get all of this stuff situated and ready to go.
And yes, there was a reporter. She did manage to get onto the island.
I forget, in the book, I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, was it Cirque that destroyed that boat convoy because they saw they're about to leave?
Yeah, that was Cirque. That was in the Last Stand.
And then they try and use the tunnels.
Afterwards.
Yeah, because like the police book I love, like that one gives so much more characterization to like just how devastating the infected are in lore. Where it's like, in Pandemic, you guys it's a game, so it can't be punishing and horrible and Dark Souls where it's like you can't win. But in the canon, it doesn't go that well. If you read the book and you read the Pierce thing, you'll get a sense of like it's not going that well for Cirque, based off of Wu's tone in both books, and just generally Wu is the commander of Cirque, the civilian side, and then Spears is the general that runs the military branch, and Winter's a subordinate of the military side. And that's another thing, is that it's not really clear in terms of like their hierarchy. Like there were some people on our Discord that were creating these really cool like diagrams of like the military hierarchy of Cirque, and I was sending it over to Chris, and he was like, "Yeah, that. That's cool. Because like you figure like it's more so like we have like a very loose arrangement, but he like did like a formal like U.S. military breakup where it was like battalions and like sections, and he had like sub names and all that based off of the Lord Bible. It was really cool. Full name for some reason you just associated as B, but he asked for 2025. When do you think co-op may come into play? I'll answer this question and then we'll wrap it up because now we're going on longer than I expected. Q1 cleanup, Q2 doctrines DNA, Q3 infected AI as a whole. AI should take us about, theoretically, some of the work, if not most of the work, will be done now by me for the AI. We just won't take it all the way. Like the infected climbing, the infected swimming. But regardless, they all have to be refactored for the new world and the new map. So I'm doing that this month and next. Theoretically, by doing it now, we've shaved off the AI cards quite a bit, substantially. And we haven't done anything to the LTs besides cave. So we're looking at Q3. Might be late Q3 to Q4. Definitely by Q4. Because you figure I would estimate once we start co-op, it would probably take us a month to get a viable prototype. And then probably another month or two to get it to where it's fully like performant, like in terms of like not memory leaks, but probably like desynchronization, like loading errors, replication errors, get all that situated, make sure we're not sending too much data over the internet to overload people's internet bandwidth. So I would say loosely around Q3 to Q4. So that way the game gets everything it needs in prep without rushing everything. And keep in mind that's an estimate. It could be less, it could be more. But you figure we're going to be working every day until it's there. Tirelessly. Because you figure this is our baby. We're going to see it through. We've made what's the word I'm thinking of here? We've basically made we have an obligation to basically get the game to where it needs to be based off of our roadmap. Just as simple as that. So let's see. Okay, well, that would conclude it, boys and girls. Thank you guys for coming to this podcast. We're going to essentially work on getting a panel of hosts. Again, message me, check Steam up into that beta, leave your feedback on the Steam discussion forums, the discussion forums on Discord. Tag me if for whatever reason, and let's get this ball rolling for a great January in terms of getting some great movement going on there. Thank you guys for coming. Don't forget, you can support us on Patreon. You could I don't know, buy the book, get one of the support packs on Steam. We are considering doing like a World War II support pack for Michael on like sometime in the next quarter for fun, as like one of the last support packs on Steam, where it would like change out some of the weapons of Cirque to be like World War II weapons, like the M1 Grand, the Thompson, and a couple other guns. So keep in mind that like we're weighing that right now to see if people want that as another optional way to support besides giving us like doing a Patreon, and they can get some cool weapons that are just out of lore and it's just little throw around basically. So let us know what you think about that idea as well. And again, thank you guys so much for coming, and we appreciate all of you and the patience and time that you guys give us to figure this out and get the game to where it needs to be.